Hey guys, today we're talking all about tryouts, both from a coaching perspective and from a parent perspective. So let's go. So this is a question that I get all the time, and I want to start from a parent perspective. So what should I look for going into tryouts? So the first thing is, if you're interested in a club, I would reach out before tryouts and ask to come to a training session. You're really not going to find out anything about the vast majority of these clubs by just going to a tryout. Plus, many of the coaches will give you an honest assessment after a training session or two about where your son or daughter is in comparison to the group that they have at the club. Ideally, a tryout would be a practice where the club would be showing you, hey, here's some of the things that we do to develop players. Unfortunately, what happens a lot is you get into these scrimmages, which I don't love because, it's very dependent on if your son or daughter actually touches the ball. What's better is small-sided games, things that they normally would do in practice to see where your son or daughter fits within the club. If all you're doing is scrimmaging for 2 hours, it can be really difficult to see individual skills of players. Also, what ends up happening is a lot of times the attacking players get a lot of attention. So if you score a goal, if you get an opportunity, whereas the defenders sometimes don't get as much exposure in that situation. Plus, as a parent, when I go to tryouts, my child is trying out for that club, so I want them to sell me on what they're doing. What are you doing that's going to cause me to want to come and bring my child to your club? And if all you're doing is scrimmaging, I have no idea what else you're going to do in a training session. So I would be really diligent about trying to get your son or daughter out to a training session with a new club you're thinking about joining, especially the coach that's going to be coaching the team that you're trying to join. I would definitely get to one of those training sessions. So what do I look for as a coach in tryouts? First thing I can tell you is the effort and the attitude of players comes into play. And you can tell right away. So if somebody makes a mistake, I always look at what do they do after that mistake? Like if they lose the ball or take a bad touch, do they get their head down? Do they, shake it off? Do they go right after the ball again? This can make a big difference. And you can tell in a tryout when a kid just doesn't have the right attitude or the right effort, they're automatically off my list. Second for me is technical skills, especially in the younger age group. So a kid who is good on the ball, I'm not as concerned if they're slower, if they're smaller. Those kids I would take much more over a big, fast, strong kid who's just running all over the place and running through people. And certainly, that's helpful. But as you get older, that difference between a kid who's big, fast, and strong, that gap narrows and the technical players win the day. The other thing is I'm looking for kids who are enjoying themselves, kids who want to be there, kids who love the game. If the kid clearly doesn't want to be there, if they're not really participating, if they're not running around, happy to be there, they're off the list as well. And a lot of times as a coach, you have a good idea of the player pool before you even get into tryouts. So a lot of times tryouts are really looking mainly at any new players coming into the club, because ideally, if you've had a group of kids, even if you just have one team in a particular age group, you have a pretty good idea who the kids maybe on the team below, the team above, who on the team below are the top 3-4 kids, who on the team above are the bottom 3-4 kids. So you have a general idea of the player pool and the kids that you're looking at anyway. Most of the time, tryouts are for the kids new to the club. So how would I run, or how do I run tryouts? Believe it or not, pretty similar to the way I do a practice. Especially in the younger age groups, I would start out with battle boxes. And battle boxes are opportunities to see how players do 1v1, 2v1, 2v2. There's a ton of variations. I've done videos on battle boxes before. I would do a ton of small-sided stuff, 2v2, 3v3. I would do rondos, introduce them to some of the concepts that I do in training, positional games, and if I was gonna play at the end in terms of a scrimmage, I would try to do a 4-goal game, like maybe a 4v4 four-goal game, or at the most open it up to something like 7v7. But to run 11v11 for 2 hours, really, to me, in a tryout, number one, you're not going to see what you want in terms of players. But as a parent, I would have no idea what you're going to offer me as a club if all we're doing is scrimmaging. So that's my thoughts on tryouts. Please let me know what you guys think in the comments. Keep the questions coming. Like I said, we're going to try to do this every single week on top of some videos now that the spring season's over. So thanks again, and hope you have a good week.